Hey, it's Friday. Let's have a cocktail with Anna Glowinski.
Let's have a cocktail indeed. Well, this weekend's cocktail will be brought to you by Anya in around about half an hour's time. But instead of cocktails, we're going to be talking about beer right now. I'm delighted to be joined by Simon on the line, who's going to be talking to us about his third edition of the Yorkshire Beer Bible. Simon, how are you doing?
Hello, hi, good to talk to you.
Yeah, great to have you on. So how are you doing today? What's the weather like? What are you up to?
Well, it's quite grey here in Leeds. I've been playing golf with my son this afternoon, and which was really good. Had a nice game of golf, and I'm now having a beer while I talk to you. When I saw the name of the programme, I thought, I hope they don't expect me to talk about cocktails, because that is not my thing at all.
Well, I do think that we would be sitting in different bars if we were to go for a drink together. We would be enjoying different tipples, because I must admit, fun. I am not much of a beer drinker. I need to convert you. Okay, well, I mean, this is your opportunity to do it. I really need you to take this away, because you're clearly a huge enthusiast. You've written 3 editions of the Yorkshire Beer Bible. What on earth inspired that?
Well, I've been writing about beer for many years. I wrote a column in the Yorkshire Evening Post, local paper here in Leeds, for years about pubs and beer. I was lucky enough to be named British Beer Writer of the Year.
Well
done. It's the top of a very small field, Anna, to be honest. But, that's fine.
Wins.
Yeah, quite right. And so I decided to do this book, which basically looked at all the breweries in Yorkshire. And so the latest edition was published late last year, this third edition, and it basically is the first one since COVID. So during COVID, obviously the hospitality trade was hit really badly, and that obviously resulted in the pubs all being closed for many months, and a lot of breweries went under. But this sort of chronicles the breweries that have stayed open, and amazingly, some that actually opened during COVID and have managed to ride it out, which is great.
Ah, interesting, actually. And how are they doing now?
Yeah, obviously it's a kind of mixed picture. Some are doing better than others, but the Yorkshire. I know you're not much of a beer drinker, but the choice of beers available to drinkers in Yorkshire is astonishing. You can go from anything from a very traditional, like 3% Yorkshire bitter, through to something that might be quite esoteric and dark and 12.8% or something bizarre like that. There's an amazing range. I mean, you're based in Spain, aren't you? I know that there's plenty of interesting breweries in Spain as well, but obviously that's not my field. But you ought to try. I mean, you say you're a cocktail drinker. You ought to try something to change your mind.
Well, I mean, okay, then here's a question for you. For somebody, what I don't like about beer is how I find that I feel that it settles heavily on my stomach. I find that it's a drink that weighs heavy on me. So if you were going to recommend a beer to someone who's normally a cocktail drinker, where would you go with that reason in mind?
Yeah, no, that's tricky. I mean, what you might want to do is to drink a stronger beer, but in lower. Oh,
I like where you're going.
A stronger beer in lower volume. So I imagine that maybe if you have a couple of pints and you're saying that that's laying a bit heavy on you, that I get. Thankfully, I don't suffer that kind of problem. But if you were to drink. And I'm madly trying to think of one off the top of my head. But if you were to go to a brewery like Magic Rock in Huddersfield or Northern Monk in Leeds and choose one of their stronger beers, maybe a 7 or 8%, and have just a half or a third of that, and then move on to something else around that kind of range, you get the taste of the beer. You'd get the taste of the beer in spades. You'd got massive, huge amounts of flavour, but not the volume that's likely to make you feel sort of bloated afterwards.
Yeah. So we're talking, shots or espresso, if we were comparing this to different fields, I suppose.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit more than a shot, but a third of a pint or something like that of maybe a couple of beers would suit nicely.
Are you someone that can chug a pint of beer in one?
No, God, no.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Taste.
Occasionally people say, "Oh, you've been drinking beer all your life. You should be a lot fatter than you are." I feel I'm a little overweight, perhaps not as overweight as some people who drink beer. But no, I if I go to the pub, as I do quite often on a Friday night with my mate, I will happily sit there for 2.5 hours and drink 3 pints. That's fine by me. I'd rather enjoy the beer and the conversation than just neck beer after beer after beer and end up falling over on my way home.
Okay, so we're talking quality over quantity.
I think so, yeah. Understood.
And I just want to pick up on something that you said about breweries that went under or even started during the COVID period. And, it's a bit mixed bag on the ones that have survived and not. What, from your extensive studies, what would you say is the ingredient that makes beer businesses and breweries survive or not? What's that special USP?
If I knew that, I'd be a richer man than I am. I think there's an element to which a lot of things have to come together at the right time for a brewery to do really well. That's obviously brewing a good product. That almost goes without saying. You have to brew beers that people want to drink. I think there's questions of marketing. I think the best brewers actually are very clever marketeers. They use social media well. They give their beers interesting names, eye-catching designs that when you walk into a pub and you see a row of pump clips or a row of keg beer fonts, you think, oh, that one looks interesting. You read the name and you think, oh, I'd like to try that. But also, there is bound to be an element of luck involved about which breweries take off and which ones don't. And I've a friend of mine, Katie, ran a lovely brewery down in the city centre and in Leeds, and I had a lot of time for her and for her beers and for their tap room. It was great, but sadly, for whatever reason, they weren't able to survive. And they, not through want of trying, obviously. Some do it better than others.
Yeah, and you talked about breweries that had good designs, marketing, social media and things like that. But I'd say that Yorkshire is a county that's sort of known for being no frills and bells and whistles. It's a grounded, down-to-earth sort of county. So how does this sort of fancy new wave of beer fit in and coexist alongside traditional
Well,
beers?
it does. I know exactly what you mean. And there are 3 or 4 very fiercely traditional breweries that have been in Yorkshire for many, many years. The likes of Theakston's. I don't know how much you know about Yorkshire beer, but beers like Theakston's Old Peculiar has been around forever. Timothy Taylor's, who brew a lovely beer called Landlord, which is one of Yorkshire's absolute best beers. Samuel Smith's, who plough their own furrow by brewing beer for their own pubs, which they sell relatively cheaply. So there are those kind of very fiercely traditional breweries, but into that marketplace have come some others doing interesting things, and they do coexist, and to an extent they play to quite different audiences, different markets. But yeah, the stereotype of Yorkshire being all flat caps and whippets really isn't true. That there is an element of that, but Yorkshire is actually just as progressive a place to live as anywhere else.
Fair enough. And I mean, has it got a particularly rich history of beer and breweries, or did you just happen to write about it because that's just coincidentally where you're from?
No, Yorkshire's got a great history of brewing. many will say, "Oh, Yorkshire's the capital of brewing in England." I mean, there are some competitors for that title, but places like Tadcaster, where there are 3 breweries and have been for many years. They absolutely represent the history of brewing. Tetley Bitter was brewed in Leeds for over 200 years, almost 200 years, and that was a beer that sold not just in Yorkshire but all around the country. And a lot of the breweries now that are doing well are selling their beers well beyond Yorkshire. Some of them well beyond England. They're exporting to markets in Italy and France and America and wherever else. One brewery I spoke to, Ilkley Brewery, who I talked to when I was making writing this book, sold more beer in Moscow than they did in Leeds prior to the invasion of Ukraine, which unfortunately ended their export trade to Russia. But Yorkshire beer breweries are making a name for themselves all around the world.
Fantastic. And I've got a number here of 180 breweries. That seems a huge number.
Yeah, that's the number I came up with. I'm sure there's maybe 1 or 2 that I missed, but that had slightly reduced from pre-pandemic when there were about 200, just over 200. So a few had gone, obviously. Yeah. So currently 180. Well, that was the figure I came to about a year ago. It might have changed since then, but yeah, a good number, plenty. Yeah.
I think it's a mammoth number for having to research them, speak to them. I presume try them for the sake of your.
I know.
Did you manage to visit them all?
It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it, Annie, Did I visit them all? No, I didn't go to all 180. I suppose over the course of writing the 3 editions of the book, I've visited probably about 90 of the 180, but I've obviously tried beers from all of them one way or another. And
can I ask, do you get some freebies here or there?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, now and again. I mean, breweries.
Is this why you do it?
Oh, obviously. No. I'm not quite that shallow. Yes, occasionally breweries want me to drink their beer, and I do beer tasting events, so they want me to showcase their beers at these events. So occasionally I will get a case of beer that lands on my doorstep and says, "Oh, try this, tell us what you think," which is kind. But yeah, it's not. Is it why I do it? No, it's definitely not why I do it. I do it because I like to write these, inform people and entertain people with what I write.
That's it. Absolute integrity there as a journalist.
Absolutely. Journalistic integrity is a much maligned thing, but it does exist.
I'm glad to be speaking to one of them on the line today. And for you, when you're going to buy your own beer, where do you like to sit down and have a beer best? What's your favourite place, and what kind do you enjoy most?
Yeah, there's a beer... there's a bar locally that I walk up to on a Friday night. I love it. Part of the reason I love it is that it's only like 5 minutes walk from my house, and my friend lives 5 minutes in the other direction, so we meet up there generally on a Friday evening. And it's called Further North, and that's in Chapel Allerton in North Leeds. We're often in there on a Friday night. They don't actually serve my very favourite Yorkshire beer, which is certainly Timothy Taylor Landlord. Which if I go into any pub and it's on the bar and I'm looking along the line, oh, what shall I drink? And I see Landlord, I go there kind of automatically. That's my go-to beer. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're not here just to talk about beer in Yorkshire in general. You have written a book about this. How did you go about that? How's the book laid out? How have you turned it into a story or into a readable topic?
Well, I hope it's readable. It's done alphabetically. It's basically every brewery alphabetically. That sounds really dull, doesn't it? The way I'm saying that. It's more like, it's set out with every brewery alphabetically. Loads of pictures, lots of, with each one, there'll be some talk about the brewery itself. In some cases, interviews with the managers or the owners. Obviously, some tasting. What do I think of a particular beer? And I've included in the book lots of my favourite beers that I've tried from around the county.
Great. And illustrated, photographed? Loads
of pictures. A lot of the breweries obviously have their own in-house photographers, so they send me lots of pictures. It's quite a colourful book, quite entertaining, and the perfect Christmas gift for the drinker in every family.
And every family's got one of those, indeed.
Absolutely, most have, yeah, definitely.
Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
And for me.
Thank you so much for joining me, and have a lovely weekend.
And you, Anna. Thanks very much.
So Simon's book, The Yorkshire Beer Bible, the 3rd edition, it's a drinker's guide to all the brewers and beers of God's own county, can be found on the Talk Radio Europe bookshop, or you can just pop the name into Google and have a look for it there. Really hope that you enjoyed that chat about beer. Am I convinced to try a beer? Yeah, why not?